forged on the gridiron in September. Perfected in the magic of March. For the fans who love the crunch of the pads, prefer a dunk, and expect nothing but the best. It's Bigger Ten. Here's Steve Deace.
Greetings. Welcome to a brand new season of Bigger Ten. I am Steve Deace, and I am still with my undead partner, Aaron McIntire, even in the middle of almost summer, still looking very Nosferatu. How's it going, brother?
Why I wore this red shirt to hopefully draw the attention away from my very pale face and maybe even make my pale face look a little bit more, full of life.
It highlighted it all the more.
Failed.
It did. But hey, failed. In this era of uncertainty, it's good to have a few constancies, right?
Yeah, sure. I'm still dead. That's a comfort.
And there's still a lot of people that would like me to be, so we continue on.
Hey.
Yeah. Ain't lost my fastball yet. All right, so our season premiere of Bigger Ten is actually a two-part premiere. We are going to lay out, I am going to lay out 5 bold predictions this week for the Big Ten West, next week for the Big Ten East, and it will be the Big 5 on Bigger Ten. 5 bold predictions for this fall. Every team in the Big Ten, not quite. I mean, the teams you care the most about. I don't think we have like a Rutgers prediction or anything in here, but most of the teams in the Big Ten, at least the ones you care the most about, will be referenced. And so, Aaron, here's how this is going to work. I'm going to lay out, these are my bold predictions for each division, all right? I'm going to lay them out, and then you're going to rate them, the likelihood they could occur on a scale of 1 to 10.
Okay. That sounds good.
With 1 representing the chance Jim Harbaugh will ever beat Ohio State, and 10 being the odds that Ohio State will remain the team to beat in our conference. All right?
Yep, that makes sense.
All right. So we begin with the Big 5 on Bigger Ten. Here's my first bold prediction, and we go with Purdue. I think that Purdue's going to have the best receiving core in the Big Ten this season, led by that man right there, back and healthy, Rondale Moore. David Bell was a revelation as a freshman last year. He's a perfect number 2. And watch out for this incoming freshman, Malik Carr. What I love about him, too, all 3 of these guys have different body types. You know, Malik Carr has almost like a tight end kind of a Noah Fant kind of body. I think this is going to be the best receiving core in the Big Ten. Another reason is the system they're in. 2, I don't think they're going to be very good on defense, man. So I think they're going to be chucking and ducking a lot. What do you think?
I think this is going to be an 8. This is almost as close, I should say, as getting to a lock as anything. You just, for all the reasons that you just noted, I mean, David Bell last year, it was like Rondale when he was out on the field, and putting those two together with the system that Brom has already shown can work even at a place like Purdue. You know what? It's going to be, when you face that offense, you better be ready to run. You better have done your sprints the week before, because they are going to keep you on your toes the entire game long. So I'm giving this an 8. I think it is. I mean, you got to look at the receiving cores of places like Ohio State and Penn State and some of the blue chips in the conference to really understand what you're dealing with here. That's company that you want to be compared with if you're a Purdue fan. So I'm giving this one an 8.
All right. My next bold prediction for the Big Ten West for the 2020 football season. Let's go to Northwestern. I predict Northwestern's going to improve its win total by at least 3 games, meaning that I think their floor will be bowl eligibility. They go from 3 to at least 6 wins, at least. And a couple of reasons why. One is that guy. I can't see him being that bad 2 years in a row. And they had a Maryland type of season with what went on at quarterback and all the injuries and everything else they had there, which brings me to my second reason, the addition of Peyton Ramsey. Now, I don't think he's a great quarterback, but he's perfect. He is ideal for what Northwestern wants in a quarterback. You've got to be mobile. and you've got to be accurate in the short passing game. That's the whole Northwestern offense. It has been for years. When they have that kind of quarterback, it's a program that can win even 9 or 10 games. And then when they don't, like last year, well, you see that the bottom falls out. I think the addition of Peyton Ramsey, I think Pat Fitzgerald is just too good of a coach to suffer another season like that. So I think Northwestern's win total improves by at least 3 games.
So 3 games is kind of the sticking point for me. I could see them improving by like 2 games. So I'm going to rate this a 3 right now. I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility. I just don't believe in them that much, to that degree, to come back from
bitter Iowa fan.
I just don't believe in them that much to be able to come back from that type of a season that they had last year. Again, I agree. Peyton Ramsey, that kid coming in, that's a lot more hope, I think, than you would have had last year, maybe about at the 2 or 3 week mark of the season. Now, there was a lot of I don't know, maybe projection or just hope about the Clemson transfer
Hunter
that came
Johnson,
in and absolutely bombed.
Yep.
But looking at their schedule, it's not a murderer's row. I mean, hell, they play Morgan State 3 weeks from the end of the season. What's a Morgan State? Do you know?
Apparently got divorced from Morgan A&M.
Yeah. So I just don't see. I don't see 3 more wins still, though. With the type of offense that they had, just a quarterback alone, I don't think it's going to fix that. So I'm giving that a 3.
Good to see bitter Iowa fans still hating all over Northwestern after all the times they've kicked your ass. But I get it. All right, my next big prediction, bold prediction, at least I think it's bold, for the Big Ten West, Scott Frost will fail to make a bowl game for the 3rd consecutive season at Nebraska again. Aaron.
This seems unfathomable to me. Now, I did not grow up as a football fan in the glory days of the 90s. I mean, I was still a little ankle biter back in the glory days of Scott Frost and Tom Osborne. This still seems just unfathomable to me that they would miss 3 years in a row. I'm going to give this a 5. If they do not...
You basically think it's a 50-50 proposition.
Yeah. If they do
if you look at their schedule, they're not like 5-0.
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah, they're not making a bowl game.
If they don't get to bowl eligibility, basically before they go on the road to Ohio State, they ain't going to. They're not going to. And they do have, they are at Ohio State. They've got Penn State at home, at Iowa, at Wisconsin, and then they finish up with Minnesota at home. Those are 5 games in a row.
Which of those games are they favored in?
None.
I don't think they're favored in any of them.
At this point, none. So
if they get off to a great start, maybe I could see them being like a 1 point or 2 point favorite against Minnesota at home in a desperate situation. But
then they've got Cincinnati at home as well. So basically, they need to, in the first half of the season, they need to be pretty much all the way to bowl eligibility to actually expect to go to a bowl. So I'm putting this one at a 5.
All right. Next up in my bold predictions for the Big Ten West, Wisconsin does not win the division. That's my next prediction. Wisconsin does not win the division. I know they're like a top 5 team in the ESPN FPI. My Wolverines were last year. We went 9-4. I know that they're the consensus pick to win the division, but I'm going to say they don't win the division this year. I think they've had too many key losses of key players, and I think the schedule for them is not favorable as well. Aaron, what do you think? Scale of 1 to 10.
So I think this is going. I'm putting this at a 4. I'm giving Wisconsin the maximum benefit of the doubt that I did not give Northwestern earlier. Now, we've talked about this multiple times. The Big Ten West is far more competitive than it was 3 or 4 seasons ago. So there are not going to be any games, for the most part, with Wisconsin within the division that they're just going to walk in there and walk out expecting a win. Hell, last year at Illinois,
right.
They expected that to be a cakewalk, and it was not. So I would say this is still a 4, though, because I'm giving them a benefit of the doubt until they prove to me that they are not just going to reload at running back, which they have had the luxury of doing for it seems like 100 years as an Iowa fan. I'm going to continue to favor them. So I still have this as less than a 50% chance, this prediction of being less than a 50% chance of happening. But that's a lot bigger of a chance than I would have given them probably last year.
You mentioned Illinois and Wisconsin and that win they had against the Badgers last year, one of the biggest upsets. Actually, I think it was by point spread, the biggest upset in the Big Ten since like 1981 or something. My latest total team talent ratings have Wisconsin's overall roster score much closer to Illinois than to Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State. So something to keep in mind. And I cannot wait to get your take on this one. My final bold prediction for the Big Ten West for the 2020 season is that this will be Kirk Ferentz's swan song as head coach at the University of Iowa.
I'm giving this one a 1. And this is based upon, I think a guy like that probably wants to try to go out on a high note. I don't think this season, I mean, it's not like they have nothing on their roster. They've got a couple of good transfers, but they have such a difficult schedule. And I know quarterbacks in their first year at Iowa, they tend to do really well. And then as far as actually win totals go in the following years, they kind of taper off. But I think this season is an outlier going on the road at Penn State, at Ohio State. I just think this season is so much of an outlier. You really can't rely on the first season magic of a quarterback. And so I really do think, and they have not put out at sports books yet. They have not put out the season win totals at our local sports book, William Hill, yet. But when it comes out, if it's around 7.5, which is what it usually is for Iowa, I'm taking the under because I really do think that they're actually going to be fighting for bowl eligibility going into that final week of the year, playing Wisconsin. So I just don't believe that this is going to be a banner marquee year for the Iowa Hawkeyes. I want to be wrong. I want to be really wrong. The schedule is just so difficult. And I really think a guy like that, if you've spent this many years, why not wait another one and go out on a high note?
Those are all good points. The other thing to consider, though, man, if you've followed Iowa under Kirk Ferentz in the years you think they're going to be good, they disappoint. In the years in which you write them off, they tend to excel. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
That's what I'm holding on to. That's my hope. So it's going to be a fun season no matter what, because I do think they have some really, really fun pieces. Fun doesn't always mean a lot of wins.
I think it's the best depending on how good the quarterback is.
Yep.
But the skill position talent around him is some of the best they've had at Iowa collectively in several years.
Amir Smith-Marset, right? Brandon Smith.
I mean, there's real explosion
Tyrone
there.
Tracy.
Not just good college players, but they're legitimately explosive at the skill positions.
Yeah, and Sam Laporta, their tight end, started to come on late last season as well. So they have a chance to have a decent offensive side of the ball. They got that Indiana transfer, that grad transfer,
the lineman.
Kronk.
Yeah.
How great of a name is that for a lineman too, Kronk? That's a great name. But anyway, he looks to be a decent player. They just got a transfer for defensive tackle to add some more depth there from Northern Illinois. He was rated as, I think, the top group of 5 defensive tackle, if I'm not mistaken. So there's some pieces there. The defensive side of the ball got a lot of question marks. But the offensive side of the ball, depending on how Petras does, Spencer Petras, they have a chance to make things entertaining. I'll give them that.
We will come back, and it's our first rendition of our Big Ten Would You Rather in our new season of Bigger Ten next.
Bigger Ten is brought to you by Michigan Podcast. If you like what you're hearing today and would like to support us, head on over to Patreon, patreon.com/Michigan Podcast, where if you live somewhere where sports wagering is illegal, you can find Steve's picks for various games for just $5 a month. In the process, you can say thank you for creating this podcast on YouTube or via podcast, wherever you listen. Patreon.com/Michigan Podcast.
All right, let's get to it. It's our first rendition of Big Ten Would You Rather here with the new season of Bigger Ten. Aaron, this one is for you. Would you rather take your chances with coronavirus or with letting Chase Young take a free shot at you?
Coronavirus. 10 times out of 10, 100 times out of 100. Not that wouldn't be fun if you had, 10 feet of pads on. But coronavirus is probably preferable if you're not built to take hits, which I don't know if you've noticed. It's been a while since I played football in high school, 8-man. So I don't think I'm really, I'm self-aware enough to know, yes, I am dead. I am the undead. I'm self-aware enough to know that I'm also probably not built to take it.
All right, now you're also in that younger demo, right?
Yeah.
Not in a nursing home. This is where sadly, the majority of deaths in our country and all over the world have come.
I will be in a nursing home though if Chase Young.
Okay, all right. I was just going to say you were in a nursing home, or a premorbidity like diabetes, autoimmune, morbidly obese. Would your answer still be, I'll take my chances with coronavirus than Chase Young?
How morbidly obese? Because I'm thinking maybe if you're morbidly
obese enough, you can take cushion a hit from Chase Young. Is that what you're thinking? Won't land as hard?
Yeah,
I hear you.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah. So It just depends on how morbidly obese I am. All right, this one's for you. Would you rather have a full Michigan stadium all season and go 11-1 with your only loss to Ohio State, or would you rather have an empty Michigan stadium, go 8-4, but you beat Ohio State? There's a lot of variables.
There is a lot of variables there, but I would take the 11-1. I would, because I also think there's a realistic chance. I mean, if that 11-1 is you're 11-0, and if you're Michigan and you're 11-0, you're in the top 4 going into that Ohio State game, like we were 2 years ago. We went down there, we were 10-1, and I think ranked number 3 or number 4 in the playoff rankings. You go down there and say you lose, even if it's 7 to 10 points. If you look at Michigan's schedule and you're 11-1 and that's your only loss is on the road to what's likely at that point the number 1 team in the country, I think you've got a legitimate claim to being a second Big Ten team in the playoff. Not to mention, in that scenario, worst Michigan would do is the Rose Bowl. Worst they would do. So I would take the 11-1. At this point, I would love to beat Ohio State. I am beaten down, though. I'm defeated. The game doesn't exist to me. I've pointed that out before until Michigan makes it matter to me again. So I kind of really want to just enjoy the other games now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm just giving myself an automatic loss there. So if you're telling me that in my mind, it's only an 11-game season anyway, and you're telling me we're going to win all 11 of those games, I'm taking that every time. Yeah.
That makes sense.
All right, for you, would you rather have to replace Jonathan Taylor at Wisconsin or be PJ Fleck trying to meet all those new expectations? For example, Sporting News put out its preseason top 25 today. Minnesota ranked ahead of both Michigan and Wisconsin. Now, under Tracy Claeys and especially Jerry Kill, and they had good team. I mean, Tim Brewster even took him to a bowl game, and Glenn Mason did a really good job there. I mean, kind of for the last 15, 20 years, Minnesota football has been respectable for the most part, except for a couple of down years. But he's already changed the perception of that program so much that they're getting more love in a major preseason poll than Michigan and Wisconsin. So would you rather have to meet those expectations for your encore or be the person that steps into Jonathan Taylor's shoes in Madison?
Right now, at this very general moment in time, I'm going to take PJ Fleck. You're the new hotness. As long as you've got that thing rolling, it's going to stay. People are still going, just because of your persona, people want to like that for some reason, or it drives some people nuts as well. But it seems like most people want to like it.
I know, though. I know a lot of people that hate it. I know that.
Yeah. So I would say it's probably easier to build upon what you did last year if you were in Minnesota's shoes, because people just want to like that. And you've got this kind of cult-like, presence in that football facility that until you start to show some chinks in the armor and some cracks in the foundation, I think your guys are still going to buy into it. So I would still want to build upon that. Whereas Wisconsin, you could say that, look at Minnesota. You have all the chips on the shoulder that you would want, but at some point in time, something's got to catch up with you. You're not going to be able to reload with a Jonathan Taylor every single time with a Melvin. Who's the Melvin Gordon that's going to step in there?
That's what's different about this time is we don't know who that is.
Yeah.
And we kind of knew it was going to be Jonathan Taylor when he came in as a freshman. Yeah. We didn't think he'd run for almost 2,000 yards, right? Yep. But you knew that he was ready to go. You kind of don't know who that is right now. I'll say this about Fleck, because my personality is not like his, and I'm not life coach guy. You know that working for me. But here's why I like him, is I think it's authentic. I've just...
See, that's why I think people want to like him.
I think it's really who he is. I think he really buys in. And that's the key to me, is your personality can be like mine, not be like mine. I'm more interested in authenticity than anything else. And, I watched the documentary with him and his family a couple of years ago. I've heard him interviewed and watched him interviewed in so many different contexts. I think the guy just really buys into light as a world and a life view. So God bless him, man. More power to him.
So one more thing. So that's kind of the mental aspect, the chip on the shoulder aspect. Here's the one thing that separates this to me. Without a generational talent, which it seems like Wisconsin has had 5 of the last generation of running back.
Right.
Who would you rather have at quarterback? Whoever Wisconsin is trotting out there, I can't remember. Jack Cohn.
Yeah.
Or Tanner Morgan.
Oh, I'd rather have Tanner Morgan. Even though Jack Cohn beat him in the snow.
Yeah.
If you look at the performance they had all
Not
season long, I'd rather have Tanner Morgan.
Yeah. Last one's for you. This is, would you rather be in Scott Frost's shoes with all of the advantages, recruiting and otherwise at Nebraska, or Brian Ferentz's shoes, lots of expectations and kind of an under the radar nepotism that you've got to deal with the whole time?
That's a good question. I think... So can I be my own man if I'm in Scott Frost's shoes, or do I have to be Scott Frost? Are you asking me if whether be Scott Frost or Brian Ferentz?
The latter.
Okay. If you're asking me which of those two guys I'd rather be Brian Ferentz. I'd rather have Scott Frost's job, but I'm not. To me, the amount of effort he has put into blaming everybody and publicly chastising players and throwing them under the bus. Very little accountability on his end. They got off to a horrible start his first year. Hey, we're building a culture here. Okay, great. But then, and they finished okay. Yeah, everybody
that was year 0.
Yeah, everybody kind of overrated the way they finished. Their one really good win, I guess if it was a good win, was at home in terrible weather against a Michigan State team with no offense, a backup quarterback that, finished 7-6. So, and then last year, really, I came in thinking that this was a wunderkind hire for them like everybody else did. But last year really left a poor taste in my mouth. I saw a lot of Rich Rodriguez. I really did. I saw, meaning a guy that the difference is Rich Rod wasn't a Michigan man and Frost is a native son, but their persona is very similar and it's everybody else's fault. Very little accountability. I just don't like what I see out of him. And I want to be wrong about that. I think Nebraska adds nothing to our league whatsoever on any other front unless they're great in football. If they're not great in football, frankly, Northwestern has more value. So we need them to be good. Like, we don't need Maryland and Rutgers to be good. We just need them to help us, we need them to be on the East Coast so we can go recruit their players. We need Nebraska to be good. And I want to be wrong about this, but what I've seen so far, I'm not impressed. In fact, I'm the opposite of impressed.
All right, that's it.
We'll come back. This week's Twitter poll results and your question of the week next.
Bigger 10 is also brought to you by Wolverine Digest from Sports Illustrated. You can find that at wolverinedigest.com. For all of you Michigan fans, you can find a daily rundown of all the hottest topics from basketball and football to recruiting and much, much more. That's wolverinedigest.com, a part of Sports Illustrated.
This week's Twitter poll, we asked the audience, will Illinois make a bowl game again in 2020? Still returning a pretty experienced roster, but a lot of you think last year was a fluke. 63% said no. 37% said yes. Which way would you vote in this, Aaron?
Well, I'm WNLing this as we speak. I think we did this a little bit earlier. I see 1, 2, 3, 4... 4 wins. So, no.
Okay. All right.
That's it. 4 definite wins. Well, a lot of maybe toss-ups.
You would be in the super majority that agrees with you on that.
Yep.
Let's get to this week's question of the week. This is from Hawk Takes, I like that name. He wants to know our thoughts on his 3 bold predictions. Number 1, Jack Plummer will lead the Purdue Boilermakers to their first 9-win season since 2003. I could see that happening. I think with their schedule, it's tough. I think that's their absolute ceiling. So I think that's possible. On our previous scale of 1 to 10, I'd give that one a 5.
You've got to be able, if you get to 9 wins, no matter what league you're in, but especially in the Big Ten, you've got to win on the road. And what you need to win on the road is a defense.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I just don't know if they have that. So I would err on the side of that being a negative proposition.
Let's flip that around then. Look at their schedule. Look at big name teams that have to go there and play, where they can control the tempo better. They can get you in a track meet going up and down the field with those receivers and that offense.
Wisconsin, Iowa.
Yeah.
That's it.
I'd look at it. I'll bet you they pull an upset in one of those 2 games, in at least one of those 2.
Yep.
All right, his next one is Minnesota will have their first back-to-back 10-win season since 1904 and 1905. If we're counting the bowl game, I could see that. I could give that a 6 or a 7. Because the regular season schedule, it's not quite as soft as last year's was, but it's very friendly as well. So if we're counting the bowl game, then I could give that a 6 or a 7. Where are you at?
Yeah, I would say I'd be right at a 5. I know that's riding the fence, and all you get from riding the fence is a sore crotch, but I think it's a 50-50 proposition if we are counting the bowl game. That's at a place like Minnesota, as great of a job as PJ Fleck has done. 10 wins back-to-back seasons, that's hard enough to do in one season. Mm-hmm. Back-to-back, it's even harder, but I'd still give it a 50-50 shot.
Finally, he says Spencer Petras will have more passing yards this season than Nate Stanley's season high of 2,951. Iowa's defense is going to be good. Right? I mean, it's got a program there under Norm and now Phil Parker. They're going to be like a top 30, 40 defense. I do think, though, they could take a step back from what they've been the last couple of years. The schedule is tough. They've got more weapons on offense. You noted earlier the record of first-year quarterbacks doing very well under Kirk Ferentz. I could see him getting to 3,000 yards. Again, if we're counting a bowl game, I could see that.
So this is going to be surprising, I think, a little bit because of what I said earlier. I actually think this is probably up around a 7 or an 8 because
I guess I didn't give it a number, so I should give it like a 6 or a 7.
Yeah,
okay, yeah.
I think this is probably a 7 or an 8 because that means if they make it to a bowl game, which I think they're going to be fighting to do, but if they make it to a bowl game, then if we're talking 12 games, that means an average of, I think, around 240. If they make it to a bowl game, that'd be an average of 220, 230 yards per game, which is pretty doable when you have the weapons that they have. So I think this is probably a decent proposition.
Well, let us know what you think of the Big Ten West bold predictions. Share yours with us on Twitter at Bigger10. Don't forget to like and subscribe, whether it is YouTube or any of the various podcast platforms that are out there. Give us a 5-star review if you do the podcast version, because it definitely helps us to get the word out about what we're doing here with another season of Bigger 10. And if you liked what we just did for the Big Ten West, I've got good news for you. We're doing it next week for the Big Ten East. See you then.